um, early morning shows, and we had early morning shows on KBOA in Kennett, Missouri, and they were just really kids at that time, and they came on earlier than we did, and they would wait till after we went off the air, and then they would go home with us. We had three small babies, and my mother would have a big breakfast fixed, and we would and they would eat breakfast and play with the children up until about 10, 11 o'clock, and then they would go home and get some rest before they had to go play their gig wherever that was at that night, and we would do the same.
Can't forget that breakfast was good old homemade, gravy and
biscuits.
biscuits from scratch.
Right, and this is a picture of Jesse and Waylon Jennings, and both of those people meant so much to me in my life. When my son's, Robbie Turner's daddy died in 1991, they were playing in Canada. Robbie was playing steel guitar with the Highwaymen, Waylon Willie, Chris, and Johnny Cash. And Robbie was crying, of course, and Waylon come up and put his arm around Robbie, and he said, "I know I can never take the place of your father, but from now on I'll be your daddy." And Waylon Jennings was a daddy to Robbie, and Jessie Coulter was a mother to Robbie. You can't believe the things that they did. Robbie has two little boys now in Nashville, and recently uh, Jessie Coulter was over in another country, France or somewhere, with her son Shooter, which she's helping promote now and is doing real good in the music industry. And here come a truckload of toys into Nashville at Robbie's house, and that Jessie Coulter had bought for Robbie's two sons. He has one son 5 and one 11, and so they have really been parents. Of course, Waylon until he died was, and Jessie still is such a part of Robbie's family. And this is another picture of me and Aaron Neville's of the Neville brothers in New Orleans, and they are great friends of mine and great entertainers. And this is a picture that uh, that I made a long time ago backstage at the Grand Ole Opry, and this is George Jones in the background, and that's Tammy Wynette there by him, and Georgette, their daughter, was about 3 or 4 years old, and this is her standing down here in the corner. And here, 2 or 3 years ago, I had run across this picture that I had, and I made a copy of it, and I gave it to the steel player with George Jones, is a good friend of mine, lives up in Kentucky, and I gave it to him, and I told him to give it to George Jones. And when he got home, he called me back, and he said, "Bernice," he said, "I instead of giving it to George, why don't I give it to Georgette, because I think that she would appreciate this more than anybody else in the world." And I said, "Well, give it to Georgette." So he gave a copy of this picture to Georgette, but it is George Jones and Tammy Wynette and Georgette when she was 3 or 4 years old, backstage at the Grand Ole Opry. And this is a couple of months before Doyle died in '91. The Highwaymen was playing the Mirage in Las Vegas for a week, and Doyle was in a wheelchair, and so we went out to Las Vegas and spent the week there at the Mirage to be with Robbie and the Highwaymen. And Doyle, as I said, was in a wheelchair, and I remembered that he had on oxygen. And then I was looking at the picture one day, wondering where the oxygen was, and I see the cord over here in my hand on the side. And Doyle died a couple of months later, so this was one of the last pictures made of him. And as I told you how Waylon was to Robbie when Robbie got married, Robbie and Tonda, Well, this is a picture of Waylon Jennings was best man at Robbie's wedding, and that's him pouring wine there at the ceremony that was done in Nashville, and as that's Waylon and Tonda and Robbie Turner, and then this picture is Tillman Franks. All of you are familiar, I'm sure. He was announcer on the Louisiana Hayride. This is me and Tillman Franks. He died shortly after this picture was made, not too long ago. And I think we've already done this one. Uh, have we not? This is a picture of Doyle Turner and Wesley Rose that I made at the uh, no, that when Audrey died in '75, she was buried, of course, in Montgomery next to Hank. And so we stayed at the Governor George Wallace and Cornelia Wallace home down there. We went down for the funeral, me and Robbie and Doyle. And this is Wesley Rose and Doyle Turner at in the governor's mansion there in Montgomery, Alabama. And the
It's got so many wonderful things.
yeah, and this is a picture. This is a picture of me and Hank Williams the third. His name is Shelton uh, Williams, and that's Hank Jr.'s oldest son. And I remember the first time I saw it. Well, Chip's mom had called Robbie to play on one of Shelton's sessions. And when Robbie got home that night over in Nashville, he called me and he said, "Mother, I met Shelton, Hank the Third, today in the studio, and I played steel behind him, and he said he looks exactly like Hank Williams Sr." And so, but I had not seen him, and then I went to Montgomery to a function there, and he had a booth, and of course I had spent some time out with his booth, but when I saw him, I mean, I just freaked out. And he was playing the same Coliseum that we had played with Hank Williams Sr. in Montgomery. And so they set me on the front row that night. Of course, I had talked to him earlier that day in his booth, and I couldn't believe how much he looked like Hank Sr. But then when he came out on stage at the same place that we had played with Hank Williams Sr., I sit there and cried all the way through the show because his movements, his looks, I mean, it just looked like Hank Sr. standing up there singing. And he's got Hank's voice, and he's got, um, he looks like him. Hank Jr. really looks just like Audrey. He doesn't favor Hank Sr., but his son looks exactly like Hank Sr. does. And this is Ray Coble. He was Bonnie. You probably remember Ray Coble. He was a great singer over in Jonesboro in the times
Yes.
that we were there, and he was managed with me and Dee Presley and the Presley Turner thing, and this and but and he was great. And this is Bob Wills' daughter, and her name is Rosetta Wills, and she lives out in Oklahoma.